When it comes to the GameCube, or the 6th generation as a whole, there's no denying there were some truly inventive, risk-taking titles made. Games that broke the mold and tried delivering something unlike anything we'd seen or played before. One game that comes to mind immediately for me is Killer7. Famed game director Suda51 and his studio over at Grasshopper Manufacture teamed up with Capcom to bring about one of the most unique titles to grace the 6th gen, and was part of the Capcom 5 list of exclusives releasing on the GameCube. While it ended up getting a PlayStation 2 port, the game did end up selling poorly across both platforms, but had a bit more popularity on the GameCube, believe it or not. It had a very divisive critical reception due to how different it was for its time. So, did Killer7 provide players with something so unique that it's actually brilliant, or was it a game ready to explode in your face with disappointment? Let's find out. Killer7's story is an intricate one, and one that demands your attention to fully grasp what is going on here. I'll be avoiding spoilers here, so don't worry about anything getting ruined for you. You'll take control of the Killer7, an elite group of assassins, each with a very unique presence and style. The game begins with Garcia Smith as he meets his handler Christopher Mills on an assignment to investigate the Celtic building due to creatures called Heaven Smiles infesting the building. Upon entering this building, Garcia is caught on camera and turns into Dan Smith, one of the 7 personas you can take control of. From here, you discover that Heaven Smiles are these hideous creatures that explode upon contact.
Oh, shit. There's more than 14. Those bastards are breeding.
As you progress, there will be ghosts you can speak with to provide more info within the area, as well as an eclectic cast of characters throughout. There's political tension among US and Japanese relations, as well as various political parties affecting the outcome of Japan as a nation. In the meantime, you will learn more that Heaven Smiles are a virus that infects people to become these hideous creatures and are being created as a new means of terrorism. Furthermore, the game has a wide range of additional topics covered to culminate the entire story, and are heavy topics like religion, women trafficking, children indoctrination, viruses, government conspiracies, and more. Each mission will provide a specific target to assassinate, whether being assigned missions by the US government or missions that the personas themselves have a personal stake in. The story is all over the place, but I mean that in a very positive way. You'll go from moments of dark storytelling to insanity on full display amongst the characters, to over-the-top comic book heroes, to sexual themes, to anime characters, to even anime cutscenes at times. It honestly keeps you on your toes the entire time. As the plot is very heavy, it provides a heck of a payoff by the end, in which you'll keep trying to guess what's happening until much is unveiled. The writing here by Shinji Mikami and Suda51 is excellent, and the lore built within this noir thriller highlights multiple personality disorder and is nothing short of engrossing.
Yes. Like our chess games, you always seem to win.
Do you know why?
You tell me.
Because you're a bad player.
Now, Killer7's gameplay is unlike anything we had ever played up to this point, and to be honest, still remains that way almost 2 full decades later. This hard-boiled action thriller has you exploring areas across 7 episodes, but does so all on rails in a sense. So essentially, you run on set paths and choose which path to access next when you reach a crossroad. Controls here are unconventional but cleverly thought out. You'll hold the A button down to move forward, and the analog stick lets you choose a path when you're at that crossroad, while pressing or holding A to make that decision and keep moving. You can do a 180 turn simply by pressing the B button, and if you're running, you can do that action much faster, which comes in handy for a split-second dodge from an enemy. Speaking of enemies, the Heaven Smiles are invisible, creepy creatures that are hell-bent on coming up to you and ending your life with an explosion. You'll hear their creepy laugh when you're near them, at which point you can hold down the R trigger to go into first-person view and aim. When holding the R trigger, you'll then press the L trigger to scan the environment so that you can actually see them become visible. You'll then be able to fire away and dispose of them. However, these smiles actually will have a critical point highlighted in yellow, and if you hit it, it'll kill them instantly. Holding down the R trigger and pressing A will fire your Persona's weapon, while slapping the C stick anywhere will let you reload manually. Knowing your Persona's weapons is essential because there's no indicator as to how many rounds are still in your clip, so try to reload as often as possible so that you're not put in a pinch. As you get farther in the game, you will unlock special shot abilities depending on who you play as, whether it be Dan Smith or Mask D. Smith.
Adios.
Speaking of the Personas, you will need to use all 7 of them throughout the game. There's Garcian Smith, Dan Smith, Cade Smith, Kevin Smith, Coyote Smith, Con Smith, and Mask D. Smith. Each persona has their own unique weapon and abilities, like Dan Smith, who wields a powerful revolver and can also charge up shots that provide a devastating explosion to whomever comes in contact with it. Cade Smith has a revolver with the scope, which would actually be the same weapon labeled Killer7 in Resident Evil 4, but she can also unlock pathways that are layered in blood by slitting her wrist to spray blood all over, revealing the secret area. Kevin Smith has throwing knives with impeccable accuracy and can actually make himself invisible so that he can run past enemies without being detected, and let me tell you, that comes in handy quite a bit. Coyote Smith wields a revolver that he shoots at an angle and can unlock doors with padlocks on them, as well as leap to areas that are too high for others to reach. Con Smith uses dual pistols that he shoots sideways and can run at lightning fast speeds and duck under small doorways. Mask D. Smith has dual grenade launchers who can also break heavy objects, blow up cracked walls, and can also charge up his grenade blasts. And then there's Garcian Smith, who wields a silenced pistol, but he is a last resort character to use in a sense. If one of the personas perishes, you will switch to Garcian, who will need to run to where you died initially and retrieve the head of that persona, then resuscitate them. The resuscitation becomes a small minigame of sorts where you will rapidly press the A button to bring them back to life in Harmon's room. Harmon Smith is actually another persona you briefly get to play as, in which he can wield a .50 caliber sniper rifle. As you face off against the Heavenly Smiles, you will acquire their blood as you defeat them. There's thick blood and thin blood that you'll accrue. If you take damage from an enemy, you can access the menu to use thin blood packets to restore your health instantly. Thick blood, on the other hand, needs to be used in Harmon's room, essentially your save room location. Here you can access the TV to convert the blood into serums, which can be used to upgrade stats for each of the personas, such as power, speed, waver, and critical. Learning each character's mechanics, you'll notice certain stats are better to upgrade for them than others, so it'll be a strategic element to be aware of. As you acquire more upgrades for that persona, you will acquire special skills like down attacks where you can finish off an enemy that's crawling on the ground, counter attacks, and more. However, while Harmon's room locations are scattered throughout, some will allow you to save the game, while others will not. Another main component to Killer7 are the puzzles. Each chapter is filled with some intriguing puzzles that'll provide you with key items to advance. You can acquire certain elemental rings that can assist, like the water ring, fire ring, and wind ring, just to name a few. The game does a good job of giving just enough clues to know which ring you may need to equip and use, or what info you may need to look for to solve a certain puzzle. The puzzles here are thought-provoking and fun to solve, never really leaving you stumped for too long that it bogs down the overall pacing. There are carrier pigeons you'll come across as well that provide extra backstory and occasional clues. Typically, puzzle solving will lead to soul bullets that you'll need to acquire, as you will need all of the ones in a chapter to use at the gatekeeper, who allows you to face off against the boss that awaits. What's interesting to note too is that upon passing the gatekeeper, you'll be in what's called the Coliseum, which appears to be an interconnected hub that will lead to each chapter's boss and will be a different room that's accessed depending on the chapter. It further lends to the overall world building. Right before the boss though, the game will challenge you with an even more difficult unique Heaven Smile to take out, some of which will kill you instantly if you don't take them out first. Killer7 does a fantastic job of introducing a healthy variety of enemy types, each with very unique traits on how to defeat them. Some are straightforward, while others, like the Bomb Smiles, have a bomb enclosure that opens and closes on their head. Hit their head when the enclosure opens and you can kill them instantly. Hit it when the enclosure is closed though, or if you miss and hit the enclosure, and chances are, you're done for. Another enemy type are the Phantom Smiles, where they have an enlarged body part instead of a yellow aura weak point, but you'll need to hit them just right, or they will teleport and explode on you. Each target or episode will introduce a few new types of enemies while still facing previous enemy types as you progress, keeping you on your toes. Furthermore, the bosses that await at the end of each episode are so creative, with not a single boss battle being similar to another. Some of them are also extremely unexpected, like this one here where the person with the most shots fired on the boss wins, or this one here where it's essentially a tense game of quick draw. Seriously though, the boss fights here are an absolute highlight of the experience. One aspect I feel I need to discuss is Killer7's presentation. The game absolutely oozes with creativity and personality. In a time where people talk about creative presentation in games, and the Persona series comes to mind for many, Killer7's overall presentation was a near gold standard for me personally. Here was this game that was unlike anything ever seen before. Just from the main menu, you know you're in for a really creepy game. Starting a mission has this sweet gunfire kanji screen followed by the assignment given and this creepy laugh. As you run on designated paths, there's this slick presentation of which corridors to choose from and highlights even which paths you've gone through already by having a blue background color to the path choice box. The path choices just slide along the screen with such sleekness, also highlighting the compass direction and name of each area. And then there's the menu screen, which is ultra stylish and incredibly immersive to navigate seamlessly. You can easily choose from the various Smith persona on the fly and see them explode into blood and then reform into the next persona chosen. You can also see the character's stats highlighted above before selecting them. Then you can access items on the left-hand side, such as certain rings you can equip or certain items to check. You can reread memos from carrier pigeons on the right, or use the blood packets as mentioned earlier that you collected to restore health on each persona. Even the health is indicated as an eyeball of sorts, and the more open the eye is, the more health you have. However, if you take damage, you'll see that eye shrinking more and more as you reach your death. The overall presentation is simply unlike anything on the GameCube, and more so, gaming in general. I cannot gush enough about the insanely sleek presentation this game conveys. Upon beating the game, which should take you roughly between 8 to 12 hours at least, you will also unlock Killer 8 mode, which lets you replay the game with young Harmon Smith this time around, and he'll don the Chicago typewriter, which should look familiar to Resident Evil 4 fans. Furthermore, completing this mode unlocks Hopper 7 mode, where all the enemies' faces will be that of a grasshopper, since the developer is, well, grasshopper manufacturer. It's a fun take to incorporate here, for sure. Furthermore, you can go back and revisit any chapter you'd like, which is a great way to go back and enjoy some of the earlier inventive chapters. You can go back and revisit the game on higher difficulty settings as well. Visually, as you can see, Killer7 is rocking that cel-shaded look that the 6th gen loved, but the art direction here is superb. It's vibrant and clean while being dark and ominous. The visual style perfectly conveys the scenario of each episode, setting the tone perfectly. The game runs at a locked 30 frames per second and just looks really sharp. The lighting is excellent as you see shadows on the characters perfectly, while the animations are smooth in action. Seeing the reload animations are always a joy too, especially with their cinematic camera angles and actually seeing the bullets ejecting and being reloaded into the firearm. The environments have a unique look to them with simplistic flat shading, yet the art direction and lighting combined make it work perfectly, where even in simplicity, it looks stunning. The smiles themselves are grotesque and some terrifying looking without question. There's even this neat blinding effect when a micro smile hits you or if you're destroying a duplicating smile. This game has such a unique take on the cel shading art form, and it pops immediately upon firing up the game. In terms of audio, Killer7's sound direction is absolutely exquisite. The voice acting across the board is really well done, and the sound effects for the weapons are incredibly powerful. The UI sound effects are also engaging and makes navigating menus and collecting items rewarding just within its audio cues. Furthermore, the maniacal laughters of the various smiles will send chills down your spine, especially if you're playing in the dark with headphones on. Another noteworthy section is Garcian's trailer home location, which makes for some very unsettling ambient sounds. To culminate this together is the sublime soundtrack. Killer7's soundtrack perfectly nails every episode and setting, whether exploring the Heaven Smile-infested Celtic building, running through the sunny desert of a desolate town, to the enigmatic boss battles, to running through the staircase corridor of a nightclub, banging your head to the Rave-On theme, which I would easily spend 10 minutes just running up and down the stairs with each persona, doing these cool 180 turns while listening to this tune. The soundtrack here just works perfectly. The only gripe I have here is that some of the best tunes are not fully heard because of how fast the segments are, like the Rave-On theme mentioned or the battle with DePaul in episode 2. Nitpicky, yes, but it feels like some of the songs that deserve the spotlight got the short end of the stick, sadly. Overall though, the soundtrack has range and knows when to make moments dramatic, creepy, humorous, insane, and downright dark. I cannot stress enough how integral the soundscape is for the overall experience here.
This is too easy.
Killer7 is one of those titles that you would never guess the kind of game it is. It's fresh, inventive, creepy, badass, thought-provoking, and exactly what you would expect from Suda51 nowadays. But for his first Western release, this was, and still is, a mind-blowing experience, and honestly what I would deem his magnum opus. Killer7 did eventually get an HD remaster exclusively on PC back in 2018, but I'm still holding out hope for a console HD port. Killer7 is essentially the video game version of a Christopher Nolan film in some ways. It thinks so outside the box and captivates you from start to finish, engrossing you in an experience unlike any other. Much like Eternal Darkness on the GameCube, Killer7 is a one-of-a-kind thrill ride and an absolute essential that truly needs to be played.